Mr. President and members of the United States Senate, thank you for taking the time to hear from me. My name is Bruce Castor. I am the lead prosecutor, lead counsel for the 45th President of the United States. I was an assistant DA for such a long time, I keep saying prosecutor, but I do understand the difference, Mr. Reskin. Before I begin, I want to comment on the outstanding presentation from our opponents and the emotion that certainly welled up in Congressman Raskin about his family being here during that terrible day. And you will not hear any member of the team representing former President Trump say anything but in the strongest possible way denounce the violence of the rioters and those that breached the Capitol, the very citadel of our democracy, literally the symbol that flashes on television whenever you're trying to explain that we're talking about the United States. Instant symbol. To have it attacked is repugnant in every sense of the word. The loss of life is horrific. I spent many long years prosecuting homicide cases, catching criminals that committed murders. I have quite an extensive experience in dealing with the aftermath of those things. Certainly, as a FOP member and a member of many police organizations myself, we mourn the loss of the Capitol police officer, who I understand is laying not too far away from here. And you know, many of you in this room over your careers before they reached this summit here in the Senate would have had times where you represented your local communities as assistant district attorneys, assistant commonwealth attorneys, assistant state attorneys. And you know this to be true, that when a horrific event occurred in your county or in your jurisdiction, if it was a state jurisdiction, you know that there was a terrible outcry and the public immediately reacts with a desire that someone pay because something really bad happened. And that is a natural reaction of human beings. It's a natural reaction of human beings because we are generally a social people. We enjoy being around one another, even in DC. We recognize that people all the world over, and especially Americans who share that special bond with one another, love the freedoms that this country gives us. And we all feel that if somebody is unsafe when they're walking down the street, that the next person that's unsafe could be you, your spouse, one of your children, some other person that you love and know personally. So you'll never hear anybody representing former President Trump say anything at all other than what happened on January 6th and the storming and breaching of the Capitol should be denounced in the most vigorous terms, nor that those persons responsible should be prosecuted to the fullest extent that our laws allow. And indeed, I have followed some of those cases and those prosecutions, and it seems to me that we're doing a pretty good job of identifying and prosecuting those persons who committed those offenses. And I commend the FBI and the District of Columbia Police and the other agencies for their work. It's natural to recoil. It's an immediate thing. It comes over you without your ability to stop it. The desire for retribution. Who caused this awful thing? How do we make them pay? We recognize in the law, and I know many of you are lawyers, probably lawyers, some of you, I've been a lawyer 35 years, longer than me. many longer than me probably. And we know we have a specific body of law that deals with passion and rage, blinding logic and reason. That's the difference between manslaughter and murder. Manslaughter is the killing of a human being upon sudden and intense provocation. But murder is done with cold blood and reflective thought. We are so understanding of the concept that people's minds can be overpowered with emotion where logic does not immediately kick in, that we have recognized examples that otherwise would be hearsay and said that, no, when you're driving down the street and you look over at your wife and you say, hey, you know what? That guy's about to drive through the red light and kill that person. Your wife can testify to what you said, because even though it's technically hearsay, is an exception because it's the event living through the person. Why? No opportunity for reflective thought. And there's all sorts of examples that we recognize in the law for why people immediately desire retribution, immediately recognize in the law that people can be overcome by events. And you know, senators of the United States, they're not ordinary people. They're extraordinary people, in the technical sense, extraordinary people. When I was growing up in suburban Philadelphia, my parents were big fans of Senator Everett Dirksen from Illinois. And Senator Dirksen recorded a series of lectures that my parents had on a record. And we still know what records are, right? On the thing you put the needle down on and you play it. And here's little Bruce, 8, 9, 10 years old, listening to this back in the late 60s. And I would be listening to that voice. If you ever heard Everett Dirksen's voice, it's the most commanding, gravelly voice that just oozes belief and sincerity. Must have been a phenomenal United States senator. He doesn't talk about ordinary people as we do in the law. We apply the ordinary person standard. He talks about extraordinary people. He talks about gallant men, was the name of the album. And now, of course, in the sign of the times, gallant men and women. And I would watch television, and I would watch Senator Goldwater or Senator Byrd or Senator Mansfield, Senator Dole, and I would be fascinated by these great men. And everybody's parents say this when they're growing up. You could grow up to be a United States senator. You could do that. They're just men and women like you are. Well, then Everett Dirksen tells us that they're not. They're gallant men and women that do extraordinary things when their country needs them to do it. United States senators really are different. And I have been around United States senators before. 2 of them in this room from Pennsylvania, I like to think, are friendly toward me, or at least friends of mine when we're not politically adverse. And I have been around their predecessors. And one thing I have discovered, whether it be Democrats or Republicans, United States senators are patriots first. Patriots first. They love their country. They love their families. They love the states that they represent. There isn't a member in this room who has not used the term, I represent the great state of fill in the blank. Why? Because they're all great? Yeah. But you think yours is greater than others because these are your people. These are the people that sent you here to do their work. They trusted you with the responsibility of representative government. You know, I feel proud to know my senators. Senator Casey up here in the back, Senator Toomey over to the left. You know, it's funny, this is an aside, but it's funny. You ever notice how when you're talking or you hear others talking about you when you're home in your state, they will say, you know, I talked to my senator, or I talked to somebody on the staff of my senator. It's always my senator. Why is it that we say my senator? We say that because the people you represent are proud of their senators. They absolutely feel that connection of pride, because that's not just Pat Toomey of Pennsylvania. That's my senator from Pennsylvania, or Bob Casey from Scranton. That's my senator. And you like that. People like that. The people back home really do. And United States senators have a reputation, and it's deserved. They have a reputation for cool-headedness, being erudite. The men and women that we send from back home to D.C. to look after our interests. We feel a sense of ownership and a sense of pride in our senators. There's plenty of times I've been around in political gatherings where I hear, there's no way Senator Toomey's going to allow that. I don't mean to pick on you, Pat, but there's no way Senator Casey is going to allow that. Because we feel pride, and something bad is potentially in the wind. And we expect our United States senators not reacting to popular will and not reacting to popular emotions. We expect them to do what is right, notwithstanding what is immediately and expedient that the media tells us is the topic of the day. So senators are patriots. Senators are family men and women. They're fierce advocates for the great state in which they represent. And somewhere far down that list of attributes, way below patriot and way below love of family and country and way below fierce advocates for their states, far down, at least that's what I thought anyway, and I still think that. Somewhere far down that list, senators have some obligation to be partisans, to represent a group of beliefs that are similar to beliefs shared by other United States senators. I understand that. And in fact, I have no problem with that system. It helps us debate and decide what is best for America, the robust debate of different points of view. And I dare say that Senator Schumer and Senator McConnell represent those things in this body and make sure that everything is talked out and robustly debated in this room before United States senators make a decision of extreme importance to the people they represent. I know you aren't allowed to talk, but I don't see either one of them jumping up and saying I'm wrong about that, because I think that's what happens. I think United States senators try to listen to each other's views. I think United States senators try to do what is right for the country. And far down is partisanship. In our system of government, and if you read the Federalist Papers, we're very fortunate because the Federalist Papers were authored as an explanation for why it is the states, the original states, should adopt the Constitution. These were persuasive documents about why the Constitution is a good thing. Because if the individual state legislatures didn't adopt the Constitution, we would not have it. So Mr. Jay and Mr. Madison and Mr. Hamilton, they had an incentive to explain what they were thinking when they wrote it, because they are explaining to other erudite people who represent individual states why it is that they feel that this is the right thing to do. And in fact, as many of you well know, Madison had to promise that there would be a Bill of Rights immediately upon adoption, or we wouldn't have a Constitution. Even then, there was a horse trading going on in the legislative body of the United States. The other day, when I was down here in Washington, I came down earlier in the week to try to figure out how to find my way around. I worked in this building 40 years ago. I got lost then, and I still do. But in studying the Constitution, in all the years I was a prosecutor, where so many things depend on interpretations of phrases in the Constitution, I learned that this body, which one of my worthy colleagues said is the greatest deliberative body in the entire world, and I agree, that particular aspect of our government was intentionally created, if you read the Federalist Papers. The last time a body such as the United States Senate sat at the pinnacle of government with the responsibility that it has today, it was happening in Athens, and it was happening in Rome. Republicanism, the form of government, republicanism, throughout history has always, and without exception, fallen because of fights from within, because of partisanship from within, because of bickering from within. And in each one of those examples that I mentioned, and there are certainly others probably that are smaller countries that lasted for less time that I don't know about off the top of my head, but each one of them, once there was the vacuum created that the greatest deliberative bodies, the Senate of Greece sitting in Athens, the Senate of Rome, the moment that they devolved into such partisanship, it's not as though they ceased to exist. They ceased to exist as representative democracy, both replaced by totalitarianism. Paraphrasing the famous quote from Benjamin Franklin, who, as a Philadelphian, I feel as though I can do that because he's my founding father too. He who would trade liberty for some temporary security deserves neither liberty nor security. If we restrict liberty to attain security, we will lose both. And isn't the way we have enshrined in the Constitution the concepts of liberty that we think are critical, the very concepts of liberty that drove us to separate from Great Britain? And I can't believe these fellas are quoting what happened pre-revolution as though that's somehow of value to us. We left the British system. If we're really going to use pre-revolutionary history in Great Britain, then the precedent is we have a parliament and we have a king. Is that the precedent that we are headed for? Now, it's not an accident that the very first liberty, if you grant me that our liberties are enumerated in the Bill of Rights, it's not an accident that the very first liberty in the first article of the Bill of Rights is the First Amendment, which says Congress shall make no law abridging freedom of speech, etc. Congress shall make no law. The very first one, the most important one, the ability to have free and robust debate, free and robust political speech. Something that that Mr. Raskin and his team brought up is that it's somehow a suggestion from former President Trump's team that when various public officials were not denouncing the violence that we saw over the summer, that was somehow the former president equating that speech to his own. Not at all. Exactly backwards. I saw a headline, Representative so-and-so seeks to walk back comments about, I forget what it was, something that bothered her. I was devastated when I saw that she thought it was necessary to go on television yesterday or the day before and say she needs to walk back her comments. She should be able to comment as much as she wants. And she should be able to say exactly as she feels. And if she feels that the supporters of then President Trump are not worthy of having their ideas considered, she should be permitted to say that. And anybody who agrees should be permitted to say they agree. That's what we broke away from Great Britain in order to be able to do. To be able to say what we thought in the most robust political debate. My colleague, Mike Vanderveen, is going to give you a recitation on the First Amendment law of the United States. I commend to your attention the analysis that he's going to give you. I don't expect, and I don't believe that the former president expects anybody to walk back any of the language. If that's how they feel about the way things transpired over the last couple of years in this country, they should be allowed to say that. And I will go to court and defend them if anything happens to them as a result. If the government takes action against that state representative or that U.S. representative who wants to walk back her comments, the government takes action against her, I have no problem going into court and defending her right to say those things, even though I don't agree with them. This trial is not about trading liberty for security. It's about suggesting that it is a good idea that we give up those liberties that we have so long fought for. We have sent armies to other parts of the world to convince those governments to implement the freedoms that we enjoy. This trial is about trading liberty for the security from the mob? Honestly, no, it can't be. We can't be thinking about that. We can't possibly be suggesting that we punish people for political speech in this country. And if people go and commit lawless acts as a result of their beliefs and they cross the line, they should be locked up. And in fact, I've seen quite a number of the complaints that were filed against the people who breached the Capitol. Some of them charge conspiracy. Not a single one of them, I noticed, charges conspiracy with the 45th President of the United States. Probably because prosecutors have an ethical requirement that they are not allowed to charge people with criminal offenses without probable cause. You might consider that. And if we go down the road that my very worthy adversary here, Mr. Raskin, asks you to go down, the floodgates will open. I was going to say it will instead of floodgates, I was going to say originally it will release the whirlwind, which is a biblical reference. But I subsequently learned since I got here that that particular phrase has already been taken, so I figured I better change it to floodgates. But the political pendulum will shift one day. This chamber and the chamber across the way will change one day. And partisan impeachments will become commonplace. You know, until the impeachment of Bill Clinton, no one alive had ever lived through a presidential impeachment. Not unless some of you are 150 years old. Not a single person alive had lived through a presidential impeachment. Now most of us have lived through 3 of them. This is supposed to be the ultimate safety valve, the last thing that happens, the most rare treatment. And a session where this body is sitting as a court of impeachment among the most rare things it does. So the slippery slope principle will have taken hold if we continue to go forward with what is happening today and scheduled to happen later this week. And after we are long done here, and after there has been a shift in the political winds, and after there is a change in the makeup of the United States House of Representatives and maybe a change in the makeup of the United States Senate, the pressure from those folks back home, especially for members of the House, is going to be tremendous. Because remember, the founders recognized that the argument that I started with, that political pressure is driven by the need for immediate action because something under contemporary community standards really horrific happened, and the people represented by the members of the United States House of Representatives become incensed. And what do you do if a federal issue, if you're back in suburban Philadelphia and something happens that makes the people who live there incensed? You call your congressman, and your congressman, elected every 2 years with their pulse on the people of their district, 750,000 people, they respond. And boy, do they respond. The congressman calls you back, a staffer calls you back, you get all the information that they have on the issue. Sometimes you even get invited to submit a language that would improve whatever the issue is. Well, when the pendulum swings, perhaps the next person that gets impeached and is sent here for you to consider is Eric Holder during Fast and Furious, the Attorney General of the United States, or any other person that the other party considers to be a political danger to them down the road because of their avowed abilities and being articulate and having a resume that shows that they're capable. I picked Eric simply because I think he has he's had a tremendous career, and he might be somebody that some Republicans somewhere might be worried about. So maybe the next person they go after is Eric Holder. And, you know, the Republicans might regain the House in 2 years. History does tend to suggest that the party out of power in the White House does well in the midterm elections. And certainly the 2020 elections, the House gained, the House majority narrowed, and there was a gain of Republicans. So the members of the House, they have to worry about these consequences, because if they don't react to whatever the problem of the day is, somebody in that jurisdiction there, somebody is going to say, if you make me the congressman, I'll react to that. And that means that the sitting member has to worry about it because their terms are short. And it's not just members of the House of Representatives with their short terms. I saw on television the last couple of days the honorable gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Sass. I saw that he faced backlash back home because of a vote he made some weeks ago. That a political party was complaining about a decision he made as a United States Senator. You know, it's interesting because I don't want to steal the thunder from the other lawyers, but Nebraska, you're going to hear, is quite a judicial thinking place. And just maybe Senator Sass is on to something. You'll hear about what it is that the Nebraska courts have to say about the issue that you all are deciding this week. There seem to be some pretty smart jurists in Nebraska, and I can't believe a United States Senator doesn't know that. A senator like the gentleman from Nebraska, whose Supreme Court history is ever present in his mind, and rightfully so, he faces the whirlwind, even though he knows what the judiciary in his state thinks. People back home will demand their House members continue the cycle as political fortunes rise and fall. The only entity that stands between the bitter infighting that led to the downfall of the Greek Republic and the Roman Republic and the American Republic is the Senate of the United States. Shall the business of the Senate and thus the nation come to a halt, not just for the current weeks while a new president is trying to fill out his administration, but shall the business of the Senate and the nation come to a halt because impeachment becomes the rule rather than the rare exception? I know you can see this as a possibility because not a single one of you ever thought you would be doing a second impeachment inside of 13 months. And the pressure will be enormous to respond in kind. To quote Everett Dirksen, the gallant men and women of the Senate will not allow that to happen. And this republic will endure because the top responsibility of a United States Senator and the top characteristic that you all have in common. And boy, this is a diverse group. But there isn't a single one of you who, A, doesn't consider yourself a patriot of the United States, and two, there isn't a single one of you who doesn't consider the other 99 to be patriots of the United States. And that is why this attack on the Constitution will not prevail. The document that is before you is flawed. The rule of the Senate concerning impeachment documents, Articles of Impeachment, Rule 23 says that such documents cannot be divided. You might have seen that we wrote that in the answer. It might have been a little legalistic or legalese for the newspapers to opine on very much, but there is some significance. The House managers, clever fellows that they are, they cast a broad net. They need to get 67 of you to agree they're right. And that's a good strategy. I would use the same strategy, except there is a rule that says you can't use that strategy. You see, Rule 23 says that the article of impeachment is indivisible. And the reason why that's significant is you have to agree that every single aspect of the entire document warrants impeachment because it's an all or nothing document. You can't cut out parts that you agree with, warrant impeachment, and parts that don't, because it's not divisible. It flat out says in the Senate rules it's not divisible. Now, previous impeachments, like President Clinton, said the president shall be found guilty of high crimes and misdemeanor for engaging in one or more of the following, and then gives a list. So all I had to do was win one. But they do that here. Has to be all or nothing. And some of these things that you are asked to consider might be close calls in your mind. But one of them is not.